Today, we're diving into two true stories that are so bizarre you'd think they were made up. They are, at their core, just incredible cautionary tales about that razor-thin line between confidence and complete catastrophe. You know, it's a pretty terrifying thought, isn't it? The idea that a whole lifetime of success, building a career, a reputation, a life, can be just wiped out in seconds. We tend to think of failure as this slow, gradual thing, but sometimes it's not a slope, it's a cliff.
So let me just ask you this. What could possibly take out a star athlete at the absolute peak of his game? Or a brilliant, respected lawyer in a top firm? I'm not talking about a scandal or some terrible disease or a market crash. Nope. It's something much, much simpler than that.
That's it, a single catastrophic miscalculation. A moment of pure foolishness that comes from being just a little too sure of yourself. All right, let's get into our first story and see just how this can happen. So for this, we're heading to Rome back in the 1970s. We're talking about a guy named Luciano Riccone. He was a star midfielder for Lazio, a team that had just won the championship. They called him the Blonde Angel. I mean, this guy was at the absolute top of his world, loved by everyone. He had it all. So here's the setup. It's pretty simple. Luciano Riccone, the football hero, is hanging out with a friend. They decide to drop by a jewelry store that's owned by someone they know. And on the spot, they cook up this idea for a prank. A really, really bad idea for a prank. Riccone's brilliant idea was to pretend to rob the store, right? He pictured himself bursting in, looking all threatening, and then his friend would reveal who he was, and they'd all just have a big laugh about it. In his head, it's just a harmless joke, but he completely, fatally misread the room. So he does it, he pulls his collar up to hide his face, sticks his hand in his pocket like he's got a gun, and smashes through the door yelling, "This is a holdup." He was totally committed to the act, thinking it would all be over in a few seconds of, comedy. Well, the result was anything but funny. The jeweler, a man named Bruno Taboccaccini, he didn't recognize the famous footballer. He just saw a masked man screaming threats. Now you gotta remember, Rome was dealing with a ton of robberies back then, and this jeweler had actually been held up before. He didn't hesitate. He pulled out a gun and shot Riccone right in the chest. The joke was over. Luciano Riccone died right there on the floor. Now, this kind of fatal misjudgment isn't just about bad jokes. Let's fast forward a few years and head across the ocean to Toronto, where another successful man's overconfidence led to a truly unbelievable end. This one doesn't involve a prank, but a different kind of performance. A performance where a man was absolutely certain he knew how things worked. Okay, so meet Gary Hoy. He's a 38-year-old senior partner at a big law firm. A very smart, very successful lawyer. His office is way up high in a modern skyscraper. And he had this party trick he loved to do for people. It was a pretty dramatic way to show how safe the building was. Hoy's thing was to prove that the massive plate glass windows in his 24th floor office were basically unbreakable. And how did he do that? He would take a running start and just hurl his entire body against the glass. It was part showing off, part a cool demo of modern engineering, and, a little bit of a thrill for the new law students. So on this one particular day, he's got a group of students in his office, and he decides to do the trick. He takes his run up, hits the glass, and bounces right off. Perfect, just like always. The glass is solid. But for some reason, he decides to do it again. He takes another run at it, even harder this time, and he was right. The glass itself didn't break. The problem was, the force of that second hit popped the entire window frame right out of the wall, and Gary Hoy fell 24 floors to his death. His confidence in the glass was spot on, but his complete ignorance about the window frame, well, that was fatal. A single critical detail he'd overlooked. So, what do we have here? A footballer killed by a joke? A lawyer killed by a window he was trying to prove was safe? I mean, they seem totally random, right? Just absurd tragedies. But if you look a little closer, you start to see they're really just two sides of the very same coin. Let's break it down. Riccone's action was a joke, and his error was catastrophically underestimating the risk, how his friend might react in a world full of real violence. Gary Hoy's action was a demonstration, and his error was overestimating the strength of the whole system, focusing only on the one part he thought he understood. One guy misjudged the world outside himself, the other guy misjudged the world right in front of him. The ancient Greeks had a word for this: hubris. It's that dangerous kind of overconfidence, that pride that makes you feel like you're invincible, like the normal rules don't apply to you. It's that little voice in your head that says you know exactly how a joke is going to land, or you know exactly how strong a window really is. So here's the real takeaway. These stories, as wild as they are really just extreme versions of a simple truth we all live with. Every single day, we're all making little calculations about risk and safety. But our perception of that risk, it's just that, a perception. It's not always reality. And sometimes the gap between what we think is true and what is true can be absolutely devastating. So in the end, a footballer's joke and a lawyer's demonstration become these dark, strange lessons for the rest of us. They make us ask a really uncomfortable question. We all admire people who take risks, people who are courageous and push boundaries. But where is the line? What is the real difference between a brave act and a deadly, foolish one? And more importantly, how can any of us ever be totally sure which side of that line we're on?